Good morning, class. It's Reader's Workshop time. Now, before we start reading, I want to talk about voice fluctuation. Always change your voice where you see the punctuation marks. Make expression to your voice to make it interesting. Also, change your voice when there's quotation marks, because that's somebody doing the talking. Always think about the character that you're reading and be that character with your voice. Here's your period. Always stop with your voice. Take a breath. Then continue. Here's your exclamation mark. This is where you're excited. Your voice gets louder. You yell, "Happy New Year!" Here's your question mark when you're asking a question and you're waiting for a response. You're waiting for an answer. How are you today? Here's a question mark. You'll find that between words. Stop, take a breath, continue reading. Here are quotation marks. This is where someone's doing the talking and you change your voice to that character to make the story interesting. Always think about the character that's in the story. Change your voice to that story so you make the story interesting to the people and to yourself. Now, Reader's Workshop is fictional stories or traditional literature, and I've chosen traditional literature. The story for today is The Wild Swans. Now, I don't think I've ever heard of this story before. It's adapted, so the author took the story and changed it a little bit to make it their own. Laura Ebrich. Illustrated, the drawer, by Kathy Mitchell. Once upon a time in a faraway land, there lived a good king and his 4 children. His wife had died, leaving him to raise 3 sons and a daughter on his own. The queen had been a beautiful and a gentle woman who had spent her days in the garden among her rose bushes. The king's youngest child, Rosalind, reminded him of the queen. From the time she was small, Rosalind loved to take care of her mother's roses. As she grew, Rosalind was a good and kind daughter, as any man could have wished for. The king's 3 brave sons spent their hours, as most princes do, hunting in the forest. One day, they caught sight of a white stag at the edge of the clearing, a white horse. And here is Rosalind tending to the rose garden that belonged to Mother. They chased the stag through the forest from dawn till dusk, from morning till night, but it slipped soundlessly through the bush. As night fell, the princes followed the stag into the kingdom of the Queen Mauve, the ruler of the fairies. Queen Mauve heard the princes crashing through her trees and in rage, angry, turned them into wild swans. Wailing mournfully, the swan princes flew over the castle walls and disappeared into the night sky. Rosalind heard their cries and opened her window. She saw her beloved brothers rise in front of the moon and disappear. The king fell into a deep sadness. Even Rosalind, who had always made her father so happy, could do nothing for him. As Rosalind took leave of her father and set out to search for her brothers, she traveled far and wide until one evening she came to an ocean. On the shore, on the beach, on the sand, Rosalind found 3 white feathers. Now here the picture's not very clear, but you can see the 3 swans flying by the moon, and she's missing her brothers and she wants to go find them. As she bent to gather the feathers, an old woman walked down the shore carrying a heavy basket. Rosalind took hold of the woman's basket upon her own back and helped her cross the rocky beach. So she was helping the old lady. "Thank you, my dear," the old woman said, smiling kindly. "What are you doing here all alone?" Rosalind clutched the 3 feathers, held onto the feathers to her chest, and replied, "I am searching for my brothers who have been transformed into swans. Have you seen any swans nearby?" The old woman nodded thoughtfully and pointed toward a rocky cove, like a rocky cove, almost like an indent in the land, in the distance. Rosalind turned her head to look. Then she turned back again, and the old woman had vanished. She disappeared. Rosalind hid in the bush to wait to see if the swans would appear. Finally, as the sun began to set, the sun was going down, 3 swans flew over the ocean and came to rest in the cove. And here she is, where she meets the old woman, right here. Although she longed to call out to them, Rosalind held her breath for fear that she would frighten the swans away. As the last of the sun rays disappeared over the horizon, over the sunset, a startling change occurred. The swans lifted their long necks and transformed into men. Rosalind could wait no longer and ran onto the beach, into her brother's arms. "We have only until sunrise," the princess told her. "Then we will become swans once again, and we must fly back over the ocean." "Then I will go with you," Rosalind replied, and the princess worked all night, making a net to carry their sister. At dawn, when they again became swans, they carried her over the ocean to their cave. While the brothers hunted for food, Rosalind curled up into a pile of leaves, fell into a restless sleep. She dreamed of an old woman she had met on the beach. Here they are carrying her to the cave where she was sleeping and having her dreams. In Rosalind's dreams, the old woman transformed into a beautiful, frightened queen. "I am Queen Mauve," the queen told her. "Because of your kindness to me, I will give you a chance to save your brothers, but it will require, that means you will need, great sacrifice from you." Queen Mauve swept her arm across the cave, and rose bushes appeared all around her. From these rose bushes you must craft 3 shirts, 1 for each brother, and when you cover the swans with them, the spell will be broken, but you may not speak until the shirts have been completed, and if you do, your words will pierce your brothers' hearts like arrows. If you talk, you're going to end up killing your brothers. Rosalind awoke to find a cave filled with rose bushes. When her brothers returned, she was sewing the rose petals into a fine cloth. Although she could not explain, her brothers knew that she was helping them. And here she is, picking the roses to sew shirts for her brothers. The Swan Princess brought Rosalind food and water and kept her warm in the shelter of their wings. She worked for many days and nights, barely pausing, barely stopping to rest. One evening, a woodcutter and his wife found the cave as they were walking along the shore. The woodcutter's wife had never seen such lovely roses, and she stepped inside the cave for a closer look. There among the roses she found Rosalind sewing petals into cloth. The couple took pity on the young girl alone in the cave. They insisted she return with them to their cottage. Rosalind could not speak to resist. As they left the cave, Rosalind gathered as many. She got as many roses as she could carry. She stayed with the couple for many days and did all that they asked of her. But Rosalind did not forget her dear brothers. She spent every moment she could spare sewing her garments from the rose bushes. And here was the husband and wife that took her out of the cave because they felt bad for her. When the 2 shirts were complete and the third lacked only a sleeve, Rosalind sewed the last petal from her final rose. What could she do? She had to finish her task. The woodcutter's wife had a rose bush that she loved above all else. Rosalind wept, cried, as she crept outside into the dark and plucked the petals of the beloved flowers. She sewed through the night, and at sunrise she had finished the last shirt. "You have stolen my roses," cried the woodcutter's wife. "You have stolen my roses," cried the woodcutter's wife when she saw that Rosalind had done. Rosalind fled. She ran from the house with the shirts. She raced towards her brothers, calling to them as she ran. When they heard her cries, they flew down from the sky. Rosalind quickly threw the shirts over them. The instant she did so, the 3 swans were transformed into 3 handsome princes. So there they are, right here, turning back into princes. Now that the spell was broken, Rosalind returned to the cottage to tell her story to the woodcutter and his wife. "I am sorry I had to hurt you when you were so kind to me," she said. "My brothers and I will repay you." When all was forgiven, Rosalind and her brothers began their long journey home. The good king had all but given up hope for seeing his children again. When Rosalind and her brothers returned, the king was certain that his eyes deceived him. He couldn't believe what he saw. Only when the children flocked around him, gathered around him, and swept into his arms, could he believe it was true. The kingdom got together to celebrate the last for many, many months. The princes were careful never to hunt in Queen Mauve's forest again, and Rosalind returned to her rose garden. She sent her loveliest rose bush to the woodcutter's wife, and the roses bloomed all year around. Now, this is your time to do your reading. Read to someone, read to your pet. If not, read out loud to yourself. Remember to use voice fluctuation. Change your voice with punctuation marks. And also think of the characters. What kind of person was the old woman? What kind of people were the woodcutter and his wife? How about the brothers? How about the girl? Until next time, happy reading.